Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy Jonathan Macri with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast coming at you. It is Thursday morning as of 13 minutes ago. I am joined by a gentleman I was just sharing beverages with not long ago, Jeremy Cohen. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hey, John. Yeah, long time no see.
Yes, very, very long time. I hope. How did you transport yourself back to your abode?
I took the subway.
You took the subway. Okay.
Was that easy?
I also took the subway, and I was a little disappointed because the Wi-Fi in the subways is not always great. So as I was trying feverishly to crush Pacome Dadiet, I'm gonna go with Dadiet.
I don't think it's Pacome though.
What do you
There's
think?
the only accent is a little carrot.
It's Pacome Dadiet,
Pacome. I added an E.
as referenced many times on Draft Class.
Yes, of course. Pacome Dadiet, as I was trying to crush tape on this gentleman, youngster, lad, the Wi-Fi just was not cooperating. So our planned 3.5 hour deep's not even the word. What's deeper than deep? It's like into the mid-ocean ridges where the magma comes up out of the core of the earth. Like we're down there. Dive on this again, young lad. You know what? We're gonna have to put it off for now. I hope that's okay with you.
It's fine. And at the risk of alienating our French-speaking listeners, I shouldn't say the carrot. I did too many years of French to say carrot. It's a circumflex. So that's Pacome. That's what he's got.
It's got.
That's it.
It's all he's got. It's all we've got, Jeremy.
That's it.
So we're gonna recap what was an eventful evening for the Knicks, and we're gonna talk about two events that are two quadrants of events that are separate on their face, but actually really could not be more connected. So why don't we start with the big ticket item, which is that fresh off of trading for one of the two or three best 3-and-D plus players in the league, in Mikal Bridges, the Knicks secured the services for the next 5 years, or 4 years, I should say, because he's got a player option, of another one of the best 2 or 3 such players in the league, in signing OG Anunoby to a 5-year contract for $215 million. That contract includes a player option on the final year, and there's a trade kicker, right? Yeah, it's a trade kicker. The 5-year max they could have given him was 5 for 230 something. 30, I forget what exactly it was. But it was in the 230s. So, they save big air quote energy here. Save about $20 million on that, what that max number would have been. And, is that important? Sure. You get wins where you can. I imagine that was the cost of the player option. And really, I don't think they are all too concerned about what OG Anunoby is making 5 years or even 4 years or 3 years from now. The player option was probably their way to get the salary number down to we're talking a few $1 million, but as is going to become a theme tonight, a few $1 million is going to go a long way in Knicks world, perhaps over the next couple days and weeks. Got that number down a little bit lower for his salary in the immediate future in 2024-25 season. Before we get into any nitty gritty, and I'm going to turn it over to you for most of that, I'll just say, I've been unequivocal, as have you. There was no universe where they could lose OG Anunoby. I never for one solitary second wanted to, for shits and giggles, see how things turned out if we just, hey, you know what? Let's go to June 30th at 6 p.m. and see what happens. No, never had any interest in doing any such thing. I'm very happy they got this done today. I'm sure they're very happy they got this done today. I'm sure OG Anunoby's very happy they got this done today. This was not a thing that you could mess around with. And they did what they needed to do to get it done. And I, read the tea leaves, and this is probably what they needed to do to get this done. So, yeah.
They had to keep him. And I understand the concept of having the Knicks by the balls, because it's in a lot of ways what they did. That was the leverage. The Knicks opted for his talents, and in exchange, OG held leverage over them. And he got a nice chunk of change out of it, which is really important. It's very clear what the impact of winning is. If you're a Knicks fan who has been watching the Knicks at all last season, OG Anunoby, a huge factor in terms of what they do. Incredible winning percentage. I think with him and Brunson on the court, it's like on the Knicks court, it's 92% of games, something along those lines, that they've won together. So they're a dynamic duo in the Knicks.
Like plus 20 something.
Yeah. They've only gotten better through the addition of Mikal Bridges. So I really wasn't concerned about the exact number. I think another factor here is I expect that with the new TV deal, the salary cap will increase, and it will not be this giant skyrocketing raise like we saw in 2016, but it will be enough breathing room where in a few years we feel pretty good about where he's at with his contract. And if you're queasy about it now, I get it, but it just feels like every time someone signs a new contract, unless it's a steal of a deal, it's going to feel like, oh, damn, that's a lot. And in reality, it's you got to look at the percentage of the cap, and as it goes up. These are all dominoes, puzzle pieces, whatever you want to compare them to. Being able to lock in one thing after another gives us a clearer picture of how the Knicks plan to operate. And that's important because there are other pieces and other moves that are clearly in need of presenting themselves. And so understanding that we can put the OG factor behind us, that we don't have to worry about on June 30th, hey, we're pretty sure, like 99% sure that he's staying, but what if he doesn't? Don't have to worry about that anymore. And that's a really reassuring thing. So thrilled they were able to get it done. Love the fact that he's here. I still can't believe that he's a Knick. Again, he's kind of been my white whale for a while. So the fact that he's a Knick for the next 4 years, that's awesome, man. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to be very clear, like, I'm not going to sit here and try to, neither of us are going to try to sit here and blow smoke up anybody's ass that, like, the money doesn't matter. Of course the money matters. It's why when Jalen Brunson hopefully extends in a few weeks on a more team friendly deal, like, that's going to matter a lot. Like, the dollars add up, and the further that you could stay below the second apron in future years, like, that all matters. At the same time, I think there are different levels of concern to contracts, and if the 10 out of 10, like, DEFCON 1 level of concern is, oh, wait a minute, we're paying Bradley Beal how much in his fifth year at the age of what? Or, I'm trying to think of another good recent, well, Zach LaVine's not looking too great either. But like contracts of that nature where you're paying older players who may be injury prone. OG Anunoby's 26 years old. He's going to be 30 in the last year of this contract. Again, we've kind of gone back to this theme a few times. Like, the Knicks seem to have made their bed with this series of moves. Like, this is their team. This is the team they envision, or at least there's a core to this team that I think they envision going forward with. So from that perspective, like, again, not trying to say the money doesn't matter, but like, I would be mildly surprised if we're sitting here in 3 years and be like, man, did the Knicks wish they could get out from under this one? But like, hey, listen, and crazier things have happened, but I'm not like going nuts about the money, I guess is the way I'm saying it.
Well, so you're not wrong, right? We're not saying that the money doesn't matter, but let me pose this to you. Does it? What is that money? If the Knicks are able to do everything that we're hopeful they'll do, and we'll get more into that, of course.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hinder them in any way, what exactly is the difference between OG getting 36 and 33 if they were going to be in pretty much the same position that they would have been either way?
I'm purely talking about, again, we don't know what's going to happen 2 years from now or 3 years from now, but like the like we don't know. Maybe it's a couple $1 million difference between this where they're at the second apron or not, like stuff like that. That's all.
Less is better. Don't get me wrong, but in terms like, okay, are you? And this is not directed at you. This is for those who might be a little bit skeptical of the price. Do you expect the Knicks to be a cap space team? The answer is a resounding,
of course not.
No. It really comes down to margins. Like, can you do something with margins and other moves? And like, that's what we're talking about. But there are ways around that. Another example is that the Timberwolves just tonight, they are above the second apron. They can't really use anything that would help them bring in new talent because that would hard cap them most likely, and they can't be hard capped. So what did they do? They traded the only future draft equity that they really had that was of value for Rob Dillingham, because there's nothing against the CBA that says you can't bring in your own draft picks, even if you're in the second apron. So they found a loophole, which is, listen, we can bring an impact player in now, and it won't hard cap us in any way because we're spending so much money that this is how we add talent to our team. The sacrifice we're making is talent 7 years from now, right? Like, there's a 13-year-old right now who's probably having the best spring break of his life. He has no idea that pick was traded by Minnesota for Dillingham, and that's fine. But in terms of like how they operate, there needs to be some level of kind of backdooring this. And this CBA is the last one on steroids. I've been thinking about this, whereas like before it was fun and it was creative. And now I feel like a lawyer and I hate it. Right? Like, but then you get past the grind of it and you get into the fun parts and it's fun again. But there's still so many challenges. Like, it's hard, and I say this as someone who is a fan and who loves this stuff, and I know you appreciate it too. But I also look at the other fans who usually are not. They don't want to get into capology. They don't care about it, but it impacts their lives. And I honestly feel for them because the NBA has created, as my mini tangent, the NBA has created a world where it's really hard for fans to just fan. There are so many rules and regulations now that it forces fans who don't want to do the hard work, and I don't blame them. It's confusing as hell, and it can be really boring. People don't want to necessarily do math. They just want to watch ball and understand what it is. So from that perspective, I totally get it, and it can be incredibly frustrating. So I wish the NBA didn't go to that length, but they did, and now it's something that we have to do, and it's creating so much just confusion, and it's tough to keep up.
That's like a perfect transition to the draft. But before we move on to it, I'm like, I don't really know what else there is to say about OG Anunoby. I mean, to me, this is just like the Knicks read the marketplace, and it was becoming pretty obvious. Like, I don't know if anybody reported it outright, but a lot of people sure danced right around it and were like, came right up to the edge of it. Like, he was getting a 4-year max. So if a guy's getting a 4-year max somewhere else, then you got to like, so then it really just comes down to what is the most, if you know you have to beat that, what is the most advantageous way for you to beat that? And again, I don't want to repeat myself. It's like you give a player option to knock a couple bucks off next year. Like, that's the sort of thing that you do. I don't really know what else to say. I mean, like they we've mentioned the idea of like maybe injury protections or this or that. Like, clearly they didn't have the luxury to put that stuff in. If they had the luxury to put that stuff in, guess what? They probably would have put that stuff in. But they obviously felt that they didn't. Anything else from you on the OG thing?
We don't have final numbers yet that might trickle in, but even still, if you're thinking, so the way that the contract is structured, right? Year one is presumably $36,637,932.
You said 36 and change?
36.6 and change.
Okay.
So the thing is, if you're looking at this number, the cap hit might change based on any unlikely bonuses if that comes up. But when it comes to counting towards the apron, because you have to allow for unlikely bonuses, that doesn't change. So maybe the cap hit gets smaller, like Julius Randle, right? Julius is earning $28.9 million this year, but he has an unlikely bonus of almost $1.4 million. So the Knicks, in their calculations, need to allow for that breathing room just in case it hits. Because if they're going to be hard capped, which we know they will be in some capacity, they need breathing room there. So with OG, like that's the final number. It's going to be 36.6 no matter what, assuming 8% raises and it ascends. The real question is just from the cap hit perspective. Will the unlikely bonuses reduce that? But it doesn't mean, wow, the Knicks have more spending that they can do. It's purely just OG's contract. So for John, what you were saying, for those who might be thinking like overpay or maybe they gave too much, like that would be the way that the Knicks protect themselves from any sort of injury concerns. But that hasn't trickled out yet, and maybe it does. If it doesn't, then that's the number flat. There's nothing like if we're saying that he had the Knicks by the balls and I'm OG Anunoby, I want all my money to be guaranteed.
And the only other thing that I will say is it sounds like an astronomical amount of money, and it is a lot of money. OG Anunoby, I just double checked right now, is going to be in all likelihood the 30th highest paid player in the league next season, or whereabouts. Is OG Anunoby a top 30 player? Probably not. Is he a top 30? I hate referring to players as assets, but like, you know, if you're, he's in the conversation, right? Like in terms of if you're trying to, like we always go back to this, if you're trying to win a championship, how many guys out there, like you, assuming you have your number one, right? And the Knicks have their number one, it's Jalen Brunson. Okay, well, if you have your number one, how many other guys are out there would you rather build out your roster with than this dude? And it's an extraordinarily short list. So, you know, it's not as much, lunacy as, again, it might seem at first glance.
I'll leave it at this, right? You know what's worse than OG Anunoby at 5 years, $212.5 million?
Let me take a guess. What?
Go for it.
Not having OG Anunoby.
Yeah, not having OG Anunoby. And you know what's even worse than that? Him going
it's to your rival.
90 mile, not even 90 miles. Well, actually,
even know
probably a little bit more. He's going right 90 minutes at least on the train to Philadelphia. That'd be even worse.
We I mean, again, we're not going to repeat ourselves. They made their bed on December 30th of last year. That was the day that they signed this contract that day for all intents and purposes. So, now I had my nifty little transition that I've completely blanked on. So it was something about money and the fans being able to just be fans. You know what fans love to do is sit down and watch a nice event like the NBA draft and watch their team pick a player that they know who it is. And I'm like being very unfairly harsh on the kid that they picked because he was like, it's not like they picked a guy who was like not on draft boards. Like this guy was supposed to go in the early second round. That's what people had him at. So he's not like an out of the blue prospect, but like, you know, you want to sit down and you want to see your team pick a guy that like maybe you know a little bit about, and or maybe if you have 2 first-round picks, make both of those picks. And the Knicks did not really do that tonight. So after trading down from the 24th pick to the 26th pick to save themselves, I believe you calculated it was about $200,000. They did select at 25, the French kid, as we've been saying, who was asked very directly, we should get out of the way, do you plan on playing in the NBA next year? And he was like, yes, I plan on playing in the NBA. I think that you will play as many minutes for the Knicks next year as I'm really got to find a way to just remember his name.
Pacome Dadiet.
Pacome. Should I call him Pacome or should I call him Dadiet?
They're both his name.
By either name. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I like Pacome.
So call him Pacome.
I thought you were gonna say, should I call him Daddy-O? I was like, maybe.
Daddy-O would be great. Pacome Daddy-O. Yeah, that's a great name. Anyway, you're going to play as many, I would think, you're going to play as many minutes in the NBA next season as Pacome is.
I think he might get at least a couple dozen more than me.
So let's get right into it. If he gets 1/12 of 1 dozen minutes more than you, that will mean that he is signed to an NBA contract, a first-round NBA contract, which, if the Knicks do that, it will eat into their room under the first apron, a.k.a. the hard cap. As of right now, as we've been saying for days, no, sorry, not for days. It seems like days. It feels like weeks. It's been a day. As we've been
It's been like
saying,
27 hours.
it's like barely a day. As we've been saying this since the Mikal Bridges trade, it could change. They may not be hard capped at the first apron. As of now, they are. That amount of money could give them a little extra breathing room, and that could be the difference between them being able to sign a slightly. Well, actually, let's get into that.
Well, before we do, I just want to, in
sure.
terms of with Dadiet. So,
Sure, let's talk about Dadiet.
I say this as someone who hasn't followed very much of the draft, so it's hard for me to comment on what he brings to the table. What I will say, the Knicks going for a higher ceiling pick with their 20s, which he is something that appeals to me, because we've heard in the past about wanting to take these swings, and the Knicks have not really been in a position where they can take high ceiling picks. Like,
excuse me, sir.
Yes,
I will not stand for the Trevor Keels erasure on this podcast.
You're right. My apologies. How could I?
Don't apologize to me. Apologize to Trevor.
I'm saying
over
my apologies.
in
Yeah, sorry. That was clear. Yes. So by having like this prototypical player who's 6'9" and a wing, I don't know what he'll be. I know what he is now, which is exactly that. I don't expect him to see much of any time outside of garbage time or significant injuries to the Knicks. But you're talking about second round picks and like, okay, maybe he wasn't kind of mocked in the first round. The Knicks have had a habit of taking guys who the scuttlebutt was the second rounders. Like Emmanuel Quickley going into draft day was often considered a second round guy, and then he shot up the boards and the Knicks took him in the first round. Quentin Grimes, there was second round talk. Deuce McBride went in the second round, but there was talks of him being first round caliber. So the Knicks have said, screw it, we're going to find the talent that we want. But the important distinction, of course, between first round talent and second round talent is going to be the contract situation. Because right now, even though the Knicks are going to be spending more money, a little bit more money, bringing in Dadiet, compared to if they did this tomorrow and found a way to draft him. The whole point here is they get 4 years of team control and then he hits restricted free agency. Whereas if he were signed to the rookie exception, it would be 3 years of team control plus a team option. But if you accept the team option, he hits unrestricted free agency. And if you decline the team option, then he hits restricted free agency. But you only have 3 years of team control. So from the Knicks' perspective, they're thinking, if we're going to burn through a year of a player's time that we actually care about, we're not going to just stuff him behind all of these players and then burn 1/3 of the contract we have. 1/4 is acceptable. 1/3, not so much. And that's why they went and they did it. And they saved a little bit of money by trading down from 24 to 26 and then using 25 to take him.
So, but again, you're assuming that they sign him to his first round contract, the 25th pick, which is a set salary slot. If they did that, it would eat into their space, which again,
that's okay,
below the hard cap. Which as of now, they're hard capped until we learn until said otherwise. They're hard capped at the first apron. I'm just like, I don't know. I'll believe he signs his contract this year when I see it, because as I was getting to, that extra money could be the difference between them using more of their taxpayer MLE than not. And correct me if I'm wrong with any of this, but so we always talk about mid-level exceptions. There's the taxpayer mid-level exception. There's a non-taxpayer mid-level exception. If they're hard capped at the first apron, then they cannot use. Well, they can use the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, but I just can't imagine a scenario where they're going to get to much more than the taxpayer amount of that, if that makes any sense. Although your numbers may seem different.
I can.
So you think that they're going to have a real chance to get to like what, 6, 7, 8 million to spend on one player?
No, not necessarily that. Sorry. We'll go into the numbers in a moment. Let's talk through 26 because
sure. So
the
we should
Knicks
say
traded out of 26.
They traded out of 26 and they got 5 second-round picks from Oklahoma City. I took a look at Jake Fisher had the report on what picks those are. None of them seem particularly great, as I could tell, but it is 5 second-round picks for 1 late first-round pick in what is perceived to be a not great draft.
Agreed. And the fact that they were able to trade out for that many, astonishing. Truly, like we were on the pod talking through all the possibilities, and we looked at past precedents, and this is largely unprecedented. To be able to get, I mean, think about it. They traded down, and then they traded out, and they netted 6 second-round picks.
6.
And they saved money.
Yes.
And every dollar counts.
Well, they definitely save money by trading out of the first round with one of those picks, and then it remains to be seen if they will save a little bit of extra money if they do not sign their first round pick to a contract this year. But let's get back to that.
So we're happy to talk about the money now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, unless there's anything else that we should cover.
I don't think so. No. So here's where the money stands. I went into this draft pessimistic about Isaiah Hartenstein. Just based on the level of reporting and what's out there. And if you're thinking the Knicks are hard capped at the first apron, how are they going to do these things? Are they going to move Mitchell Robinson? Is Isaiah Hartenstein going to get a ton of money? Nick Claxton just got 4 years, $100 million. So like the market for centers is insane. At least that's where it seems to be set. And now we don't have to look at what could be considered poor decisions. And you can, like, I don't say this to hate on the Nets, but oftentimes it's like, oh, well, that raises the market. Well, it doesn't have to. It could also mean that it's just not a great deal. Like Tobias Harris's max contract didn't raise the market for good but not great forwards. It was just viewed as a contract that was larger than perhaps it should have been, but I digress. When you look at this team going into tonight, if they were going to make both of these picks, let alone just one of these picks, it felt like, especially 2 though, it's going to be really hard to get wiggle room. And OG's contract gave clarity. So I'm going to read off these numbers that we have, and you'll be able to see where the Knicks are at. So we've got OG making $36.6 million this upcoming season. Randall's making 28.9. Brunson's making really 25. Bridges 23.3. Josh Hart 18.1. Mitchell Robinson 14.3. DiVincenzo 11.4. Deuce 4.7. Dadiet 2.7. And then Sims a little over 2 million. So that is 9 players. Or, excuse me, that's 10 players. Those are 10 players. You need 14 for the roster. If you have those 10 players, that plus the unlikely bonuses that DiVincenzo and Randall have, the combined amount gets you to, $169.4 million.
And that's with the incomplete roster charges?
It's not.
Oh, okay.
That's another thing to add. So, but let's focus on that just for a moment. You talked about the incomplete roster charges. For those who don't know, when you're below 12 roster spots, you get a roster charge. A roster charge is equivalent to the minimum of the NBA salary, the year 0 minimum, right? So that's basically rookies. So pretend the Knicks, which they could easily do here, took the 38th pick, the 51st pick? Was that the pick they got tonight?
Yes.
51st pick, and then an undrafted free agent. If they took those 3, right? And I don't know what they're going to do tomorrow, but spitballing. Let's say it's Mogbo. Apologies if I mispronounced his name. Let's say it's Reeves. Let's say it's one other player. No clue. Maybe it could be Kolek. I don't really know. It could even be Rokas Jokubaitis. Like whatever you want to say, 3 players who have never stepped foot in the NBA, getting those salaries in. You do that. You are now at $172.9 million. You're in the tax by $1.5 million. But you have apron space at the first apron of $5.77 million. So there are 2 paths here, right? The first, the Knicks are hard capped at the first apron. That's the thought. If the deal that went through with Bogdanovich and Bridges is untouched, if nothing happens, and that's the only thing, and the Knicks are hard capped at the first apron, that $5.7 million, $5.8 million is just enough to go out and use the taxpayer mid-level exception on someone like Goga Bitadze.
That's
That's how you would squeeze in a backup center and be able to continue on your merry way. However, if the Knicks find a way to sign and trade Precious Achiuwa or Alec Burks, the reality, in my opinion, is it would be Precious Achiuwa, because even though you need to sign basically at least a 3-year contract to do a sign and trade, but only the first year has to be guaranteed. But giving a 3-year deal to Alec Burks, look, you could do it, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's much more logical to say to Achiuwa, hey, here's a contract. I believe it'd be like 3 years, $13 million or some odd, where you basically start the salary. That salary is like $4.3 million, which is a hair more than what Bridges makes when you add Bogdanovich and Achiuwa together.
The difference between Bogdanovich and Bridges right now.
So your starting salary at minimum is anything that's a little bit more than what you're receiving with Bridges, which is that 23.3. So you want to send $23,300,001 out at minimum.
Just for argument's sake, you could also, and I think Precious will make more like what you're saying, but like if there were an opportunity to do a sign and trade with a player making less money, they could combine the player making less money as long as it was more the minimum with I guess Sims and guarantee that, and as long as again that total added up to larger than the difference between Bogdanovich and McCall. But we're getting into semantics. And
with restricted free agents, a lot of times what happens is base year compensation, which we've talked about before. Base year compensation doesn't apply to Precious Achiuwa because in this case, he wouldn't be making more than 20% of what he made last year.
He made 4 point something last year. So yeah.
Right. So he's basically making around the same salary. So if you were to do that, and now we're talking about Bridges and the Knicks are at the second apron, that's where they're hard capped, not the first apron. Then you're the Knicks. You have $16.6 million in space between the amount of money you have and the second apron. And lo and behold, Isaiah Hartenstein's contract is just under 16.2, which means you would have $430,003 of space. And perhaps what the Knicks could also do is, maybe it's not at the beginning of the season, but at some point, maybe they find Jericho Sims a new home and they move him out. And then, hey, look who's here. It's Ryan Arcidiacono. Ryan Arcidiacono's cap hit, I believe, would just be like $1,000 more than what Sims makes now, which means it still wouldn't really impact anything about the second apron. So basically, this is what it comes down to, right? I feel better about Isaiah Hartenstein coming back to the team. I'm inclined to think that's the case. But even if he doesn't, the Knicks have found a way to carve out just enough money to give something to a center, whether it is Hartenstein, whether it is Bitadze, or whether it is another free agent that is on the market that they feel is worth that. But there aren't a lot of players I can think of that meet the criteria of strong rim protector, good offensive rebounder, good passer. And essentially, like, I would hope they bring back Mitch, because Hartenstein, really good. But the fact that the Knicks could make all of this work and all it took them was trading out of one pick and then filling up the rest of their roster with bare bones contracts, that would be why Brock Aller and his team in the front office would be among the best at what they do. It's just genius stuff to basically have all of them in a room and say, how can we get better as a team, but also keep all of the pieces that are in this building that we care about? Because outside of, with all due respect to Bojan Bogdanovic and potentially Precious Achiuwa, they're not in that circle.
If that happened, I think that would cap what, for me at least, would be a pretty perfect next offseason. I am less hopeful than you on the Isaiah Hartenstein front. I think, for one, I would love to dismiss the Claxton contract as a one-off by a team that just spent too much money. Maybe it is. I think Isaiah Hartenstein is a better player than Nick Claxton, and I know you do too. And I think a lot of teams around the league would agree with us. And all it takes is one, and I don't know who that one's going to be, but the way I keep going back to the phrasing, the way Woj and Ian Begley reported what they did last night, or about Isaiah Hartenstein, and how there was a level of definitiveness to the way that they were like, he's, this might be the end for him. And like, I could go back and read the exact words, but like, it's, I don't know. I got a very distinct impression that like they knew some, and I don't know if that's what. Sorry, you were saying.
No, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying also circumstances may have changed. They could have changed.
That's absolutely right.
They could have changed the Claxton contract, and that now the value or price of the brick's going up. Or it could have changed in the other way, where the Knicks have now done enough where they don't have to dump one salary to bring him back, and all these things. Like, they have room. They can afford to do these things. But it feels like we're in the end game just from this offseason, where to me, it's like there are two choices. It's on the bright side, you get Hartenstein. On the less bright side, you have the taxpayer mid-level to get someone like Batase. Other than that, I think things are pretty settled.
Yeah, well, I agree with you for the most part. If we go with the less ideal scenario, which is that Isaiah Hartenstein does have a bigger offer somewhere and he walks, I agree with you completely that the most likely scenario is they use, about $5 million and bring in another center, and that's all she wrote. The only other option that could be available to them if they wanted it would be if they were to use swing a trade involving Mitch, which I understand what I'm saying. That would mean you're losing both of your centers from last year. But in theory, if they wanted to, they could have a trade in which specifically they turned it into a 3-team deal, which they sent Mitch somewhere, and they returned, it would be essentially less than $10 million in salary, because then you clear the gap between Bogey's contract and McCall's contract. So you're sending out more money in the trade because you're including Mitch and taking back a player making $4.3 million less than him. In that scenario, you would, for number one, be getting a player back for Mitchell Robinson that makes, I don't know, $7, $8, $9, $10 million a year, something like that. Is there a team out there that has a player that is making around that much money that you want on your team and that you think could help you? And then in addition to that, you are also going to be able to use the taxpayer mid-level exception, which is another $5.2 million. And you would have a lot more wiggle room below the second apron. You wouldn't really be able to do anything with that now, other than what? Use the biannual?
Well, no, because that would definitely hard cap you.
That's right. Yeah. So you can't even do that. So that would really just be like wiggle room in case some other trade presented itself later in the season, perhaps, or maybe even later in the summer. We don't know. But I wonder, is there any scenario where they would find that additional wiggle room valuable enough to basically change over their entire center position? Because that's the only other possibility that I could foresee being maybe on the table.
Maybe. I'll say this. As the perhaps master of overthinking cap sheet and moves, far to my own detriment, and I know this, and I still do it. I think we're heading in that direction.
In what direction?
I think taking Mitch and moving him and losing Hartenstein and essentially starting from scratch at the center position is a bridge too far for what.
So you don't think that is what's going to happen? Okay.
No, I think last night was also just a blur. Like I saw one of my friends sent me a screenshot from Reddit where it was like this is the move, and I'm surprised Jeremy just didn't accept the trade as like you have to make a swing, and I was just in shock. It wasn't anger.
I think we were all in shock.
It was just pure shock. I couldn't believe it. So me processing it in real time as we went through it, different story, but it wasn't like I absolutely abhor this. Just like they did it. Oh my God, they finally did it. And to go from that, because one of the thoughts that I had last night while all the chaos was going was, well, what if you did move Mitch and other things? And I've gotten to the point where I think my first instinct going into this offseason was the right one. I would be shocked if Mitch were moved this season, but I wouldn't be super surprised. For me, it's always been about if Mitch gets moved, the time to do it is likely 2025, summer of 2025. And I feel like that holds true here, especially if you lose Hartenstein, because then you're exceptionally thin at the 5.
Yep. It's a lot. It is a bridge too far in all likelihood. I will just also say, because we talked about it last night, there does remain the possibility that they could trade the other guy, who's the obvious one, is Deuce McBride. I would at this point be surprised if Deuce were moved. But again, crazy things have happened. So maybe this is it. Maybe this is it on the trade front, or maybe, as you say, they sign and trade Precious Achiuwa to open up some more room, and we'll see if that could net them Isaiah, or if Isaiah is waiting on a big payday from someone else.
One more thing as well. I've seen talk about, hey, Jericho Sims, based on his contract, couldn't you just let him go? Well, he's got a partial guarantee for $651,000. So if you were to cut him loose, you're incurring a dead cap hit of that amount, and then you have to sign a replacement player anyway. So you're actually spending more money, which is why it makes sense to guarantee Sims's contract and then use it however you'd like. You keep him here, you could move him. I would expect, again, if we're talking about salaries and connections and fitting in under the aprons, I would expect Ryan Arcidiacono to be here. The easiest logical thing that I could think of is moving the player who doesn't see any time on this team, moving him from this team because he's going to be a free agent, and you have Ryan Arcidiacono making the same money.
I would expect at this point Jericho Sims to be back. He is, you know what? At the way things are shaking out, they may need to rely on Jericho Sims a little more next season than maybe.
You think he's here the whole season?
I don't know.
Just because, if you draft a center in the 30s,
if you draft the center,
right? If you were to do that, you have depth there. You've got 3 centers.
Well, let's see what they do with 38. Let's see if they maybe try to move up a little bit from 38. I mean, we've heard about how now the second round is the next day, so there will be maybe more jockeying to get in position to draft certain guys. Filipowski is the kid from Duke that was projected at some point early in. Did I get his name wrong?
No. You said it right. I'm just thinking of.
When I got it wrong. What?
No. It wasn't like you got it wrong. It's more just I don't know why I laughed, but I just don't really see it. Maybe it's because I just know Bernard loves him, and that's why.
That's it.
It's like, oh yeah.
But he was, he was supposed to be at one point this year he was a lottery pick, and now he's sitting here on he's going to be sitting here on day 2. So, lots still to be determined. We will see how all of that shakes out. I don't have anything else. I know Andrew has a few words that he wants to say before we get out of here, though.
What do I have to say? You guys covered it all. I want to thank everybody for their participation in our draft coverage the last 2 days. Well, really last night. Whether it be everybody tuned into our playback watch along. Apparently, producer Kev was a hit over on playback, and that makes me very happy. We will be live on Thursday afternoon as well. Me, Kevin, and Chris will take you through the second round, so tune in for that. And to everybody that came out to Penn 6 on Wednesday night. Shout out to Kevin Danishevsky, as well as the Garcia clan, with Ray and Sam, Johnny Caps. It was good to see you. Gerald Wilkins, former Knick. John Gerald Wilkins was on the flyer that he was going to be there, and then the night happened. Can I just tell a story? Can I tell a story, everybody? And we'll wrap with this. So we're all a little delirious from what the last 24 hours have been. I went to bed at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, so that's how my Tuesday into Wednesday night went. And I was determined that I would make it out to the Penn 6 watch party. And so I missed any texts or notifications about who might be going. And as everybody knows, we sent out a flyer that they were having a watch party at Penn 6. We would be there. And Gerald Wilkins, former Knick, would be there. You can meet him and sign autographs. And so I get there, and there is a gentleman there in a Gerald Wilkins jersey that I thought, okay, I guess this is Gerald Wilkins. And Ray, Mr. Garcia, was like, I think that's Gerald Wilkins. And the guy started walking around with a Knicks WWE championship belt. And he was like, would you like to take a picture with the belt? And I was like, sure. I'd also like to take a picture with you, Gerald Wilkins, former Knick. And like, I sent it to my dad, and I tweeted it out, like hanging out at Penn 6 with Gerald Wilkins, former Knick, while we wait for the Knicks to make their selections. And then one Jonathan Macri comes over to me and says, so Gerald Wilkins canceled. So I took a picture with a stranger that just like was wearing a Gerald Wilkins jersey. And interesting.
He's a really moment. Nice guy, though.
Nice man. He probably very confused that I wanted to take a picture with him.
Maybe you just thought you were being nice.
Yeah, he was going around to our whole table got a picture with him. Everybody was like, "Hey, would love to talk about your life and your career," and he was probably just so confused. So, yeah, apologies to that man who was not Gerald Wilkins.
We appreciate his presence at the draft party, as do we, everybody. Thank you, Andrew, for coming out.
Yes.
To support the cause.
I'm glad I got to meet not Gerald Wilkins at the party and watch the Knicks not make a multiple picks. I did make a pick. We'll see how long Pacome Dadiet plays, but
they'll make up for it tomorrow, I'm sure.
Yes.
We'll see if tomorrow's a day without breaking news, or if we go 3 for 3. Jeremy, anything else before we get out of here?
I expect the Knicks to trade up because of course they will. Because why wouldn't they? Because they're chaotic and I love it. 5 seconds. I can't. 6 seconds, really, when you consider it all. That's.
I mean, they did stick at 25. And 25 has worked out well for them. So maybe the
magic number.
Yeah. We'll have to see what happens. Okay. This was great. Don't forget to tune in to Chris and company's draft coverage for the second round tomorrow. That will be fun. And I think in terms of other upcoming content, Andrew's looking at me. What?
Yes, I totally forgot to tease this.
Oh yeah,
special. You don't know what I'm about to say.
The free agency live stream?
Well, okay, yes, free agency live stream on Sunday, we should say. We will be live. Things may be done as far as the Knicks are concerned, although maybe we'll react live to what happens with Hartenstein in the moment. But we will be live the hour before and then however long after, hopefully not too long after, for free agency on Sunday. I believe it opens at 6, so we'll be live at 5 o'clock, right? So 5 Eastern. And then just be on the lookout. I may be doing a bit of a pregame pod, but like a crossover tomorrow with a special guest on the feed. So
I wonder who that could be.
You'll want to check out that conversation maybe taking 10 seconds to do something. So more on that later.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Jeremy. And thank you, everybody, for checking out another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We will be back with more fun and games before you know it. Peace out.
And if anybody knows the real Gerald Wilkins, he's invited on the pod anytime.